So I got all these certifications and I was still struggling. And I was praying and asking God to show me how to apply all these great things that I learned through his word, because I knew that his word was the key to find freedom. And really through that, I was able to walk in peace with food and to finally find joy in my body and comfort in my own skin. And that really developed into the ministry that I have, Grace-Filled Plate. So we help you find freedom so that you can apply all the good stuff you know. So God's grace says, you're not there yet, but in the meantime, I'm going to give you the strength and the means to get there. And when you fall down and when you scrape a knee, don't run away, because I never expected you to be perfect. Come back to me. Let's get you up. Let's get you focused, and let's keep you moving.
We believe that you are strong by design, and you were made in God's image to have a strong body, mind, and spirit. You're listening to the #1 strength and health authority podcast in the world. So let's get ready to unlock your potential and transform your life in today's episode.
Hi, and welcome to the Strong by Design podcast. I'm your host for today's show, Coach Tanya, and joined today by a very special guest, Brandice Lardner. I hope I said that right.
Did
I say that right?
Lardner. Yeah.
This is going to be a really, really interesting discussion, because we've had lots of shows and lots of times we've had conversations talking about diet, nutrition, wellness, but this one's going to take a little bit of a different route. And I'm really excited to sit down with Brandice and have this conversation. Brandice, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a great opportunity to chat with you.
Oh, well, great to have you on here. And we were just talking a little bit before we started recording and going on the show here about a few things. And we were talking about how efficient we are, because we got the introduction to one another last week, and here we are getting on a podcast the very next week. So we just kind of really got down to business, didn't we?
We did. It's nice to get stuff checked off and to jump on it when everything's schedules are aligned. Sometimes it's like rocket science. You have to, or space travel, to coordinate schedules. So you got to run with it when you can.
Exactly. So Brandice, before we kind of jump into the meat and potatoes of what we're going to be talking about today, give us a bit of background on yourself. I do see. So you're the woman behind Grace-Filled Plate, which I'm going to ask you more about that title later. But also, you've been featured on TLC, Thrillist. You've been involved with Spark People. Like, you got quite a few accolades. So you're bringing a lot to the table. So give our listeners a little bit more information on who you are.
Yeah. So lovely to meet you all. So I'm Brandice, and my blog is Grace-Filled Plate, but my history goes for decades beyond then. I have been a certified personal trainer, nutrition coach. I have all kinds of credentials. And I think it was because I was trying to fix myself. I had struggles with food since I was a teen, and have been on sort of trajectory of overeating and eating disorders. And I had a real bucket list of eating problems, I guess, that I wanted to check off. And through that, I think sometimes we are not sure, like, do I have a passion for it, or am I trying to fix the problem that I have? And so I got all these certifications, and I was still struggling. And I was praying and asking God to show me how to apply all these great things that I learned through his word, because I knew that his word was the key to find freedom. And really through that, I was able to walk in peace with food and to finally find joy in my body and comfort in my own skin. And that really developed into the ministry that I have, Grace-Filled Plate. So we help you find freedom so that you can apply all the good stuff you know, because so many of us, we have knowledge, like, we're not lacking nutritional knowledge. It's that we don't have the skills to apply it because we're maybe still operating from a place of hurt and pain. So we got to heal from the inside, and then we're able to do the thing that we've longed to do. And that's really what I do and what I'm super passionate about.
Well, that's a very, very strong, beautiful message. And this is the first podcast I will have done with someone in the health, wellness, nutrition circle that we're coming kind of from a faith-based approach, which is quite unique. And I love what you said in terms of most of us we know the right things, move more, watch caloric intake, we know all of those all of those elements in terms of if we want to lose weight, if we want to feel better, if we want to keep our bodies healthy, we can check the list. But then somewhere in the knowing and the application, there's like a chink in the chain. Mm-hmm. There's a missing link. And I love what you said about, if we're still operating from a place of hurt and pain, we kind of can still get caught in this cycle of we know what to do, but we're either not doing it or not doing it the right way because what's driving us is still something that's much deeper. Mm-hmm. That can make it very difficult to focus, make us much more easily led off path. So a very unique approach. So I was looking over, you sent me some information prior to us meeting today, but you have some things mentioned that I picked three that we can talk about a whole lot more, but there's three that I really want to talk about with you today. So you have on your profile sheet, why we need God's grace in our eating. I would love for you to talk about that because I think I know for myself, before meals, we say grace. Mm-hmm. You just say grace. I've done that for a long time. And I know a lot of other people that do it, but this is taking it even a step further. So I kind of want you to talk about that.
Yeah. So we're talking about God's grace from the idea of his favor and help and love. So we do say grace before a meal where we thank God for his provisions and we really honor what he's done to give that to us. Like, it's so cool to have food on our table. Not everybody can say that, right? But this is accepting that we don't have to be perfect. So if you're like me, and maybe not all of your listeners relate to this, but this is my story of going on a lot of diets where I really got stuck in what I would call all or nothing thinking, meaning the diet starts on Monday. So Sunday night at 11 p.m., I'm eating all the ice cream because I don't want it in the house tomorrow. And this is sort of that diet baggage that comes from going from one plan to another that heaps on guilt and shame, which is the opposite of grace. We're expecting ourselves to perform a certain way because the book said we should be able to, or the plan says we did, or all the testimonials show that all these people were able to do it, but we can't. So we heap this pressure of performance on ourselves. And the truth of the matter is we're never going to be perfect. That aspiration is something that is going to set us up for frustration and guilt and shame, which can lead to overeating. So when I say that we need God's grace in our eating, we want to accept the fact that there's only been ever in all eternity one perfect human being on this earth, and that was Jesus Christ himself. And our desire is to do the best that we can with what we currently have. Like we said, we could be operating from a place of deficit. Maybe nobody ever taught you how to manage stress or comfort without food. So to expect yourself to suddenly go on a new plan and just ditch the stress eating is pretty unrealistic. So God's grace says, hey, kiddo, because that's how I like to think of my God, right? Just like this heavenly papa, you're not there yet. But in the meantime, I'm going to give you the strength and the means to get there. And when you fall down and when you scrape a knee, don't run away because I never expect you to be perfect. Come back to me. Let's get you up. Let's get you focused and let's keep you moving. Because those of us who were stuck in the diet mindset would allow one little lack of compliance, one little problem to completely blow our day. And we're just saying better is better. Hit the reset button and continue to do a 1% better each day. And within that, you're going to make the progress that you hadn't made before. But so often we're afraid to give ourselves grace because we think we might just give up and stop trying. But until you do it, you're not going to see the benefit of being your own encourager and really giving yourself that room to grow and room to make mistakes and room to learn from those mistakes.
That's a very powerful message. And there's so much in there that I'm taking notes here. There's so much in there that I want to address and unpack and go a little deeper into. One of the things I wanted to ask you was, so what about, I think most of us know someone, maybe even ourselves, that have tried every diet out there or have tried dieting multiple times. And like you say, we fall down or we have a bad day or a bad week or whatever. And that's it. We just like, well, what's the point? It's just, I know what to do. I did it. It wasn't working. It's not working fast enough. I'm not getting the results I think I should be getting. All of the things. So what would you say, or what would your conversation be with someone who doesn't really have a strong background with faith, or they don't have a very strong faith, they don't have a strong connection to God, how would you have a conversation if you were sitting down with someone having coffee and they were talking about their struggles and dieting and just all of the things? How would you open up that conversation coming from where you're standing in terms of, that faith-based, well, I won't say faith-based dieting, or how using, getting all tongue-tied here, leaning into God's grace to help you through that? How would you start that conversation? Because I think it's pretty amazing, but when you are looking at and talking with somebody that doesn't have that, how do you, I don't want to say sell it, but how do you plant a seed, or how would you plant a seed in a conversation to maybe get them going, I want, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question, because the cool thing from my perspective as a Christian and seeing what the Bible says is that God's principles work for everyone. Like in the Word of God, you can read about renewing your mind. You're like, oh my goodness, that's cognitive behavioral therapy. Like everybody thinks they came up with something new, but it's probably you can find a root in God's Word. So when we're looking at giving yourself grace, it comes down to really how we would treat someone else. So imagine your child, your sister, your best friend, like a stranger even, would come up to you and say, hey, listen, I've been really trying to follow this food plan, but every time I do, I just mess it up. And then I'm just like, forget it. I'm just going to eat it all. There's no hope. You would probably look that friend in the eye and encourage them that nobody ever expected them to be perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. The best thing you can do is keep trying. When your child is learning how to walk, in fact, our neighbor was just, we had a little fire pit with some s'mores over the weekend in our cul-de-sac, and they brought their little 18-month-old. And let me tell you, the kid can't catch a ball yet. But when he tried, everyone hooped and hollered and yelled and clapped like crazy because they knew he needed the encouragement to keep moving forward. And somehow, as we get older or we get a little jaded, we think like we're the exception to the rule. We don't need encouragement. We don't need cheerleaders. We need a drill sergeant. But that doesn't work. So my suggestion would be to give yourself a week, or if that scares you, 3 days or 24 hours, and say, I'm just going to celebrate my wins and not beat myself up and see what happens. And I think you'll be shocked to see that you reset, that you say, that's okay. I'm going to put it behind me. And rather than eating a box of cookies, you eat one cookie and you move on. So embrace the fact that we all thrive on encouragement and apply that to yourself, and don't think of yourself as the exception. Give it a whirl, see what happens. You can always go back to beating yourself up.
Right. And we're all really good at beating ourselves up. I've always said in the years, even when I had my own practice, I used to often remark how it doesn't matter how tough anybody else we think somebody else might be towards us. We are way tougher on ourselves and way less forgiving of ourselves than anybody else is. And I love what you say about celebrating our wins, because I don't really think that we do enough of that. I think there's a tendency to wait for the big win, like the big win. But what I want to impress upon our listeners, and please comment, that on our way to a big win, that requires a lot of smaller wins. It's very, when you run a race, you just don't go from the start line and boom, you're at the finish line. There's a lot of in between. There's a lot of moments of totally tired, kind of fed up, frustrated, ready to just quit. I don't, everything's hurting, but pushing through those little moments of challenge, or even the bigger moments of challenge, those are all wins that need to be celebrated. And I would really, if we could share anything, the one thing I would like is for people to embrace that, celebrating those small wins, because without them, you can't get to that big win, or it's a very empty journey if you don't celebrate the small wins. And I really love what you said about, well, you didn't eat the whole box, you ate one, or maybe you ate 6, but you didn't eat the whole one. So it's not that you ate the cookies, so we're going to focus on that and punish ourselves. We ate way less than we normally would. That's a huge win. And we need to celebrate those things.
Yeah. So there's author BJ Fogg. He talks about tiny habits. I know Atomic Habits was big, and now we have BJ Fogg with Tiny Habits. And he really goes into the celebration aspect. See, we're very dopamine driven. In fact, if you talk to someone who talks about sugar or any other thing that we're trying to avoid, generally speaking, it's that dopamine hit that keeps us coming back. But when you celebrate a win, you're actually releasing a little bit of dopamine into your system. So what's better to do something small and go, it was only small. And then you don't want to do it again because you thought it was lame,
Right.
or thinking it's awesome. And then you do that tomorrow plus once more. And you're right. That's the thing that's going to propel us and get us to the big win. But sometimes we don't see the value in it. So we really need to celebrate that. Think of it as compound interest. Today might not feel that great. You're like, yeah, I put $5 in the savings account. But if you put $5 every week in the savings account, when you retire, you're going to have something significant. And thank goodness these kind of wins don't take that long to compound. Today, you're 1% better. And tomorrow you're 1% better. My gracious goodness. At the end of the month, at the end of the year, you're going to be farther than you've ever been, but you've been tricked to think that it has to be significant to matter. When if you wait for the significant, it's never going to happen.
True. Very true. I couldn't agree more. I think that's such a great message. Another thing I wanted you to dive into was this statement of how to align body image with God's word. That kind of blew my mind because when I read that, I'm like, I don't know that I've ever thought of it like that. And I would be really interested to hear from a larger group of men and women who are concerned with their health and, how we look, because we can say all we want about we want to be healthy, we want to be well. We like to look good. I mean, all of us like to look good, and we're always maybe wanting to push it and work a little harder to look a little better. But this whole aligning our body image with God's word, you've got to explain that.
Yeah. So in my coaching, I have seen that there are two things that keep people stuck. Number one, we talked about all or nothing thinking, right? That idea that it has to be perfect and one bite leads to an overeating or kind of pushing stuff to the side. The other thing is negative body image. And that's because the urgency to lose weight, not that the losing weight is bad, we can have those goals, but the urgency or the tying a great amount of our personal value to weight is going to trip us up into that all or nothing thinking because we start to panic and we start to make unwise decisions, right? If anyone has had one of those days where they get on the scale and who knows, maybe you ate a bunch of salt the other day, maybe you're constipated, maybe you're on your cycle and the scale goes up and you want to overreact. And then you do something silly like you don't eat or you fast in an unhealthy way and then you end up binging, right? And it sets this cycle in motion. However, once we begin to appreciate what we currently have, we can start to treat it like we appreciate it. For example, if you feel like garbage, you're probably going to eat like garbage. However, if you refuse to get stuck into all the negative body image stuff that's out there and really mine and glean and look for things to appreciate, it's going to affect your entire relationship with food, yourself, and for those of us who are Christians, God. And so God calls us to be thankful in all circumstances. He doesn't say when you're a size 2 or, if you got a 6-pack, then you can be thankful. No, we have so much to be thankful for. And that shift will change how you feel. For example, starting head to toe, thanking the Lord for your ability to see, if you can see, your ability to taste, the legs that you may, the hips or the thighs that may be your source of angst or the thing you look at in the mirror that you criticize. I would challenge you to thank God or be thankful for the fact that those are the legs that allow you to bend down and pick up your grandchild or your children, to do the gardening that you do, the arms that may jiggle because, what happens as we age a little bit. Those are the arms that allow me to lift my hands and praise God or to carry my groceries or to take out the trash or to cuddle with my daughter. And rather than always operating from a place of deficit, I don't like this, I want to change it, it's not good enough, we're coming from a place of gratitude. Wow, what I've been given. Let me do better. And that perspective shift, I believe, is really biblical, right? We should be thankful for what we've been given. Will make the entire journey so much more enjoyable, honestly. And I have like a coaching program that I work with ladies, and that is one of the first things that we have them do. Diets are all about what I'm not, what I shouldn't be eating, yada, yada, yada. It just gets old. What if we focused on all we do have? Adequate food on the table, ability to walk, all of these blessings we have in our lives. And then suddenly we feel full of joy and peace and contentment. And that really does make a huge shift in our overall life quality.
Oh, absolutely. And I think anybody that's listening that has employed that practice for other reasons or in other areas of their life, when you start, you can't help it. When you start to show gratitude and actually speak it out loud, I think that's where some of the more great power comes from. When we start speaking it out loud and believing it, it's amazing how other things kind of just, I don't know, I haven't yet decided. It's sort of like what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Is it that things just start aligning better, or is it because I've become more grateful and like present in that gratitude that I've just sort of like the doors and the blocks have just kind of fallen out of the way. So the things that were always there aligning can just do it with greater ease. I'm not sure which, and it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. The key point is that when we do actually let ourselves off the hook and start to be grateful for the things, like you said, our eyes to see, our legs to move, our arms to hug our children, all those things, when we do become aware or make ourselves very aware of that and show gratitude for it, it's really quite cool what that ripple effect is in our own lives first, and then how that actually expands out beyond that, because when we start doing that and saying these things, we have we have children or grandchildren that are probably watching and hearing that, friends and family that are probably watching and hearing that. And all of that goes towards very subtly making other people maybe stop and think and become like, oh, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. I'm older, I get tired, my hip hurts, but dang, I can still go out and throw the softball around with my grandson, things like that.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking it's like versus going to Walmart and buying a vase or going to Tiffany or somewhere in between. Right. Maybe there's somewhere in between that I can't think of, Macy's or whatever. The vase that we get at Walmart for $2, it might crack and we're like, yeah, whatever. Put it in the back of the cabinet, like shove some stuff around it. The one that's from Tiffany's or the one that you spent more on is going to be in the cabinet, well protected, dusted, taken care of. And I think that is really how it's going to change the way that we approach our body, where it comes less from like, oh, I got to exercise to lose weight, to beat myself down, or I have to restrict. It's like, wow, how can I make myself feel better and really honor what I've been given? Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And I love that message. Okay, now here is the third thing I wanted to dive into, and this is when God is your weight loss plan. Talk about that, because I'm sure there's people listening going, what? Like, God, that's the one diet. I haven't seen that diet. I've seen all the other ones, but I've not seen that one. So talk about when God is the weight loss plan, like what that means, what that looks like, and how people might employ that. Like, how would they utilize that? Because I'm sure I'm thinking one of the greater components of that is a mindset, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll come two phases, right? For the Christian and the person who's like, how do I apply that? But I'm not kind of in that place. So for me personally, and the ladies who I would work with, we're believing the fact that when we are Christians, that we have wisdom or the Holy Spirit of God residing within us. You could go to 100 plans and you're going to see 100 different things. This food's good. This food's bad. You're supposed to eat this much. You're supposed to do that much. Like, again, we said, it's not a lack of knowledge. It's a lack of being able to apply it. And so when we make our relationship with God first, we take care of our spiritual health. We begin to take care of the negative self-talk. We begin to align our thinking with His word. So we're not eating for reasons that God would call us to be fulfilled on Him through. We can pray and ask for wisdom about those steps to take next. And when I'm working with women, I will literally say, brain dump everything you've ever felt like you should ever change in your diet. Like, get out a piece of paper, write it down. Like, get it out of your heart and your mind. Silly stuff, good stuff, everything in between. And then you're going to go in with a red, a yellow, and a green highlighter. There's some obvious stuff in there. Like you don't want to go on a grapefruit diet, but it was in your brain. So get it out, get it on the paper, right? Red mark it, red mark it, red mark it. No way, not going there. And then there's going to be some other things that you might want to do. Drink more water, have some veggies, right? Eat when I'm hungry, stop when I'm full. Like these are kind of like good things to do. And then you got some stuff in the middle, right? When we look at what it is that we would like to do, I want you to either pray about it, or if you're not praying person, be led by your peace. Like follow your gut instinct. We cannot do everything all at once, but look at your options and find what is going to work for you in this season of life. This season where you have your available time, like, work out for an hour a day may be on the list, but you may be caregiving for young and old generations. So that's not going to work. So it's your available time, your available energy, and your available resources, right? You might not be able to afford a cold plunge every week, and that's okay. Mark it off the list, right? And choose a spot to start with one. And this is where the grace piece comes in, right? It's doing the little, and I use air quotes, so you can't see me because it's really can be a lot for us. Doing the little and asking God for help, asking God for strength, and then giving God the glory when he is the one who helps us get it through, and celebrating that win, celebrating that small, because it's the small that becomes big. But if you're following just your gut instinct, your peace, choose something that feels really good to you. In coaching, right? One of the best things that you do for people is not tell them what to do. It's ask really good questions. You ask questions until you'll hear it. When you're on a phone, you'll totally hear it with them. You're like, well, talking about this. And they're like, oh, well, I could do that. You're like, that is not the one. But eventually they talk and they process and they're like fired up. They're like, this is what I want to do. And that is the thing that you put your heart and energy into. So when we talk about God being your weight loss plan, it's understanding that as a Christian, seeking weight loss is never going to work for me, because I need to seek God first, and then he's going to bless my efforts moving forward.
So you have a practice where you actually work with clients one-on-one?
I have a group coaching program.
Coaching program. Okay. So just take us through that. What does that look like? I'm someone driving in my car today, and I'm listening to the podcast, and I'm thinking, this might work, because this sounds like something I can get on board with. Take us through, what's it like to join your group, and what's it like to work with you? What can I expect in that process?
Yeah. So we have what I would call, and my ladies call, graduate school for food freedom. So if you're someone who's like, I just need someone to help me choose grilled chicken over fried, it's not the intensity with which you need, but I think you can take what we spoke about today and apply it and run with it. However, for the woman who has been stuck in the cycle of trying and failing and wanting more, but not knowing how to get it, that is really what our program is for. And it's 6 months long. And we really start out the first half. We don't talk about food a whole lot. We give some gentle guidelines, but we want to change the way we interact with food first. So if we were to start the program, and I even gave here's some good foods to eat. Our particular student and her personality would weigh and measure her well-being, or how well she's doing the program, based on how well she ate according to the food list. And we start out with habits that are focused on gratitude. Our second habit that we do is called sowing seeds of self-control. It's kind of that tiny little habit where we know I've been trying to do it all for so long and it never worked, but I'm going to do the little thing, and I'm going to do it by faith, and I'm going to watch God grow it. And that just works for all of us, because as we block out everything else that's going on and we put our effort on one thing, our success in adopting that habit long-term is exponentially higher than when we try to do too much. And then we talk about body image. And then finally, we'll start to look at food. My favorite part of the course, we go on something called the GRACE path. So it's an acronym, is when we get to see and we give the student an opportunity to think about what it is they like to eat. I'm like, ladies, because we talk to ladies, but men, this totally works for you too. Can you believe no one has ever asked you, what do you like to eat? Because honestly, that's really, really important. How do you like to eat? Used to be, it was a bunch of small meals throughout the day. Now it's like fasting. Well, you know what? All the best ideas in the world, if they don't work for you, aren't good ideas. So let's look at it. How do you like to eat? What kind of foods do you like? And we're going to start from there, because we don't need to fit into somebody else's prescription. We need to make sure that it's sustainable for us long term. And then we move on to habit change and learning how to change those habits long term. And it's pretty exciting. And the nutrition is actually towards the back of the course, because like I said, we've got plenty of nutrition knowledge. We need to know how to apply it first.
Right. No, I think sounds like a really, really amazing program. It's certainly helping a lot of women. So then would you agree with, or what would your comments be, that a lot of times, and working with, having worked in nutrition and fitness my whole life, what would be your comment to the statement that, a woman may seek you out because she wants to, whether it's lose weight or like something to do with her diet, which is usually tied to how she's looking, like how she sees herself when she looks in the mirror, and then how she's feeling about that. And there's all kinds of physical and like emotional, it's a psychological, it's all kind of mixed up in one kind of ball of things. How often is it the relationship with food, the relationship with losing weight is tied to something much deeper that has nothing to do with food, really?
It's complex, isn't it? It's like all about the food, but it's not about the food. It's so,
yeah. Somehow it gets tangled up, but please speak to that. I honestly, it's something that usually comes up in most of my conversations with women or with guests about food, nutrition, weight loss, but I don't know that it can be talked about enough or too much.
Right. Yeah. There's a pause that we don't take to pay attention to ourselves at all anymore. We're all going, making assumptions about how we think or feel, or even what our problems are, right? In fact, it can feel a lot easier to focus on the food. I would call food, in many cases, a preferred problem, meaning I have some negative things that have happened to me. Someone could say when I was young, that came around body image. Some people have trauma. Sometimes it was subtle things. Sometimes you just ate for comfort. And you don't want to go there. So you always focus on fixing the food, which is actually kind of the outcome of the initial problem. But we call it a preferred problem because it's more comfortable. We know what it's like to try a diet and fail. And so when speaking to people, we can calm the anxiety about looking into the past a little bit by really bringing a gentleness and a curiosity to it. Because you're like, I don't want to go like dig up all that stuff. It's super painful. We don't often need to know every little dot, every little T that was crossed and I that was dotted. We just kind of got to have an idea of why we're turning to food in the first place. And for me, that is granting yourself the gift of a pause. That moment when you are ready to kind of throw the towel in, right? If you maybe don't have a bunch of food issues, maybe you're just like, quitting for the day. Or if you're going into a binge, whatever that is. In that pause is going to reveal so much information that you can then get to the root of it. Why am I doing this? What do I hope to obtain? And you may have no clue, right? But I would encourage you to talk to text, to write it down, just brain dump it out, as ridiculous as some of it could feel, and kind of get into it. I'm afraid if I don't eat, this will happen. I'm afraid if I do eat, this will happen. Earlier today I was feeling, and start to kind of pay attention. You're not going to unravel it all in one day, but over time, you're going to see threads of what's happening. And this is mine. When I neglect to rest or I take on too much, then I go to the fridge. And I started to pay attention, because when that urgency, that crunchiness, that grabbiness inside of me came up, it was because I didn't have a pause or rest anywhere in my day. So rather than fighting the food, I could start to work in these little pockets of time of doing quote unquote nothing, which we were scared to do, but it allowed me to unwind to the point where I didn't implode. And then I met the true need. So if you can give yourself a little bit of time, a little bit of experimentation, the opportunity to fall hard, but learn from it, I believe you'll start to see what the true need is beneath it. And then you can start to meet it. Now, as a Christian, I could go, okay, man, it's stress. So let me just Google Bible verses about stress, Bible verses about comfort, and begin to change that way that I'm thinking and reprogram my mind purposefully. Because initially I was always like Bible verses about how to eat less or how to have self-control or how to do this. And that's good, but I didn't get to the root of it, right? Or maybe it's loneliness and you go to food when you just feel that gut, like emptiness, and it just, it's retching within you. And you say, oh my goodness, I can start to find connection with others earlier before I get to the point of where it feels like it's of no return. And then you kind of get to the root of it. So there will be some food stuff that's going on. We have habits that we've formed for many years, but the root that keeps you from being able to change is generally has nothing to do about the food.
Yeah. Very, very well said. Now, I have a question. I'm not sure how to word it, but in all the things that you're saying, because it tends to be, I know we have like our children are so constantly being inundated with images and graphics and messages about, what's pretty, and like when you're pretty and you look good, this is kind of the life you have. And if you're not if you're not that super pretty, perfectly built person, well, then maybe life won't be as kind to you. Like there's a lot of I think there's a lot of pressure on young girls and young boys about how to look, how to dress, how to do your hair, like all of that to look a certain way for a certain type of response, certain type of life, certain experiences that everybody wants to have. So do you think is it first of all, I guess it's a multi-part question. Is there a place for it? And would it serve a need if there was some kind of faith-based nutrition education that was available to our youth in the school system, or whether it was through church or within the regular school? But do you think this is something that actually has a place? Because I don't know about you, but I find having worked with adult women, now we get all the things that kind of weren't dealt with. Like when you talk about food is definitely a part of it, but we've built up relationships, comfort and coping skills, using food to help us because of trauma or things that have happened, because of life experiences that maybe weren't great, because of sadness we're carrying, things like that. So there's this connection. Everything's kind of very intertwined and tangled up together. But I've often wondered because we took a lot of states. I'm from Canada. A lot of provinces and cities took physical education out of the school curriculum, which I think was detrimental to learning, because our brain movement for kids to be focused and to just be energized, and it's just healthy to get them moving during the day. But I've often wondered, what about something that I wouldn't want to call it diet education, because the word diet has got so many connotations that I don't know are healthy. But what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, it's interesting. I have seen some shifts, when you speak to a millennial crowd, there have been some shifts to less physical centric, right? And more into personal attributes, et cetera.
Right.
But I have found in my own life, and I'm hoping I can do this with my daughter. She's 8. So we're just kind of getting to that stage, but to really guard what we bring into our eyes with great diligence. Now, we're out and about, right? There's only so much you can do. You can go to the mall, you walk past Victoria's Secret, it's just there. But at some point, limiting, programs, I canceled magazines. I was just brutal and going through and unfollowing people on social media that would make me feel discontented, because it didn't build me up. It didn't give me any goodness, but I definitely could see having some information in the schools that would reach that age to help to pour life into their hearts and minds. In fact, we have a gal actually in Hungary who's taken my body image course and is using it in the schools in Hungary, because that was approved by the Hungarian where she was living, to begin to help the girls to celebrate how our bodies are made and to see all the beauty in what God has given us, instead of always focusing on the external. And it's such subtle things. I am thankful to be able to help my daughter be able to frame and work through some of these things as she's going to be faced with it. And so maybe it's understanding that it's going to hit us from every way, but what we do with it is what's important. Just like any emotion can pop in, crazy thoughts. You ever have crazy thoughts pop in? You're like, oh yeah, let me do this. And where did that come from? We don't know, but it's what we do with the thought that's going to matter. So it comes in, we have a set kind of tiny habit that we might want to do. When the negative thoughts come in, my husband calls it the mind toilet. It's his whole thing. You like flush it down the toilet. And I'm going to thank God for something about my body, or I'm going to pray for that individual who, is causing me to feel uncomfortable. It's not their fault, right? They could probably use some prayer. You might be the only person who's praying for them, and change your relationship with those stimuli. That way they're no longer triggering you, but they're pushing you into a more positive action. But I'll tell you, I've had the food thing down for a while, but the body image is the thing that will nip me in the butt from time to time, and it'll come out of nowhere. So I got to kind of be constantly on guard and develop a level, like an intolerance. There we go. An intolerance for a lack of peace, or like this disruption comes in. I was like, oh my goodness, I cannot go there. I cannot live there. I got to get rid of it right away because it's not going to do any good in my life. And then flush it down the toilet, smash it, roll it, throw it away, and do something positive. So those thoughts live a lot less, spend a lot less time in my mind, and I get rid of them a lot more quickly. But it's a discipline. It wasn't because one day I looked in the mirror and I went, oh, wow, everything's great, and I don't have any more negative body image. No, I had to fight for it, right? And that was a worthwhile fight.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that you said that, because I think it's really important. Again, something that can't be said enough is that once we make the connection here, like we get it, we're committed, we understand. It's also the knowing that it's a consistent, it's a consistent work in progress. It's like, anyone that's suffered with addiction, that is, on the wagon, or what, living sober. It's when you sit down and talk with them, they didn't just go through whatever process and boom, everything's fine. A lot of times, for a lot of them, it's a daily work in progress to stay the course and honor that commitment and promise they made to themselves, to their own wellness. So it's the same with, like you said, body image. And when we start to, when we realize, okay, well, we know these things, these are how we can utilize them, but being aware of the disruptions that come in and going, okay, I recognize this, and I got two options here. I can spiral down that path, or I can employ the things that I've been learning to not go that way and to keep heading in the direction I want to. So I love that you mentioned that, because I think that's something that can't be said enough, because we all have days. I mean, you talk to any coach, any teacher, anybody that works in this arena for a living, if it's their career, we all have days. I have days. This morning, I did not want to go to the gym. I just traveled last night. I was tired, and because of the traveling, I ate later than I normally do. So I didn't have the best prep going to sleep last night. So getting up this morning, I'm like, oh, I just don't want to. But I'm like, okay, no. And I didn't go. What I did do was I altered my workout a little bit to accommodate the fact that I was a little more tired. I just kind of wasn't on my game, but I still went and I did something. So it's that recognizing, that awareness, giving yourself the grace, but recognizing that I feel this way. It's not the end of the world. That doesn't mean I'm not going to use it as an excuse to not continue with the good habits I've built up. But I can modify, because I am not really feeling at my, I'm not feeling at my top game today. So I'm going to keep going. I'm just going to make a few adjustments to do it and then walk away feeling successful. And it wasn't the greatest workout, but at least when I left the gym, I'm like, I did it. That did feel good. And that's what I was able to give to it today. That was it, and I think that's just being human.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I do think it's important we give ourselves grace, like you said, for being human, because we aren't expected to be perfect. It's such a, I don't even know what that is, what perfect is.
Right. It's an illusion that keeps us trapped, for sure.
Yeah. Right. Brandice, it has been an absolute delight having you on the show, and I really enjoyed this conversation. I'd love to have you back again so we can talk about some more elements of this, because I really do think it's just a fascinating and beautiful program that you offer to women and men for this type of healing. I'm going to call it a healing because I don't think it's as much. I mean, it's definitely about diet, nutrition, wellness, health, but it's really about healing because there's so many things that you tap into with the people you're working with. And with that being said, where can our listeners find you if they want to learn more or find out about working with you? Where can they look you up?
Yep, just gracefilledplate.com. And there at the top, you'll have a link to our platinum program, to the podcast. Got a bunch of freebies. Like you can really fill yourself up on all our freebies and get a feel of what we're looking for, what we do. Our number one freebies, like right there at the top of the website, it's called the Faith is Greater Than Food Jumpstart. And that's like a 7-day little mini course that will help you see the principles that we teach, give you a great Bible study template, teach about that sowing seeds of self-control, and get you sort of in that first step moving forward.
Love it. That is great. Well, you heard it, folks. gracefilledplate.com. That's simple. Go there and check it out. Sounds like there's lots of great freebies too to get you started and to just get a feeling for how Brandice works with her clients. Again, thank you so much for being on the show. It was an absolute delight to have you. It was such a pleasure to meet you. I'm really glad Jared made the introduction for us. So thank you, Jared, and give shout out to my
Jared
for the shout out to do this. He said, I found somebody I think should be perfect for you to interview, and he was not wrong. And thank you for listening. Please remember to give us a 5-star review and share this podcast with someone. We all know someone who could always use a little pick-me-up, a little extra help, or another resource in their toolkit. Thank you again. I'm Coach Tanya, and I look forward to chatting with you all soon. Take care. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe so that more people can find out about our show. Plus, you don't want to miss any future episodes with the amazing guests and topics we have lined up for you.